reps, and both struggled. But this morning, head coach Mike Pettin said Hoyer is a better leader. Quote, he was the clear leader from the beginning. We've maintained all along that if it was close, I would prefer to go with a more experienced player. Brian has done a great job in the meeting rooms and with his teammates on the practice field and in the locker room. The decision was made last night after meeting with offensive coordinator Kyle Shanahan and quarterbacks coach Dow Loggins. Coach Pettin informed the players this morning. The question, quite simply, is it the right decision? Stephen?
It is the right decision. It's the right decision, Skip Bayless, because of a multitude of reasons. Number one, the experience, the veteran leadership, the absence of quality parts you have around him all factor into the equation. To take a young quarterback and throw him to the wolves like Johnny Manziel would have been thrown to the wolves, I think would have been much to the non-benefit of the Cleveland Browns. Ben Tate, we'll see what he does along with West in your backfield, but there's still question marks. Miles Austin, Nate Burleson, still question marks at the wideout. Jordan Cameron obviously is a stud, and we know what he can do. They've got a couple of high-priced dudes on the offensive line assigned to protect the quarterback, but you essentially don't have a lot of weapons. Josh Gordon, there's an imminent suspension that's coming. We all know that, so he's not going to be available to you, which is why I mentioned Miles Austin and Nate Burleson. So if you don't have the requisite weapons necessary in order to really supplement your quarterback, and you don't have a stout running game, because remember they ranked 27th in rushing last season, then again, I was opposed to throwing Johnny Manziel to the wolves. But I want to emphasize that Johnny Manziel did not lose the starting quarterback job for the Cleveland Browns, and it's not because he never had it. He didn't get the job because he lost out on professionalism. It's that simple. When you hear Mike Pettin and those guys talk about practice, talking about film room, talking about respect and command in the locker room, all of these little things added to the non-distraction that Brian Hoyer is. I think it's clear that Johnny Manziel did not get this job because they think he has a bit of growing up to do. It wasn't just about who flung the football better. If Johnny Manziel doesn't have these distractions, if he is perceived as being the consummate, ultimate professional from open and tap, I don't think this happens. I think it happened because of things off the field as well as on the field, the kind of contagious effect that the quarterback can have on a locker room. And I think those things factored into the decision by Mike Pettin and the Browns more so than anything else.
For the record, by all accounts, Johnny has been first in and last to leave day after practice day after practice day. That he's been nothing but the model student in the classroom, that he has grasped the offense much quicker than the staff thought he could grasp the offense. So if it's professionalism we're talking about, are we going to factor in the trip to Vegas?
I'm saying,
is that what we're doing?
I'm saying to you, this is the NFL. I'm not saying it's right. I'm telling you that what I'm prognosticating about, what I'm speculating about, it's entirely consistent with the image that the NFL has created of itself. Every little thing is magnified.
Okay, so
things
is
that
the
we don't
little thing with the middle finger magnified?
The middle
do you
finger,
think that was the straw that broke the back here?
I think it's possible. Certainly that sounds silly on its face, and I understand and recognize that.
Because you thought that the world was greatly overreacting.
And I still believe that. But it doesn't negate the fact that this is the NFL we're talking about here, and they believe that every little thing you do, particularly as a quarterback, has a profound and lasting effect on a locker room, and they guard against that, especially when you consider that this is their third head coach in the last 3 years.
Okay. Now, back to the question. I obviously, as I dug in and said yesterday, I believe this decision was wrong. But I am not surprised by it. It obviously took 24 extra hours to arrive at this decision because, and this is a predictable conclusion that they arrived at, but it was because Brian Hoyer threw them a curveball, sometimes literally a curveball, on Monday Night Football as he crumbled under the head-to-head national stage competition with Johnny Football. I think that's exactly what happened. But from the start, the staff wanted Brian Hoyer to have this job. He's a local boy made good. And and again, I'm going to point this out again and again because it's just fair to Johnny Manziel to point out that 3 primary decision makers on draft night did not want to draft Johnny at all. The GM, the coach, new head coach, and the coordinator. So does this surprise anybody? No. Do I think that they want Brian Hoyer to do what he did last year and pick up where he left off when he tore his ACL in his 3rd start?
Right.
Yes, and I think they think he will because again, being totally objective, Brian Hoyer was really good last year in those 2 games. Remember, at Minnesota, he throws for 321, although 10 of those balls for 146 yards went to one Josh Gordon. 10 for 146.
Sure.
That's quite a game by that young receiver, right? And then Brian threw for 269 in a home win, 17-6 over Cincinnati.
Yep.
It's pretty impressive.
Right.
But the defense is a top 10 defense, and it will continue to get a little better under a very good defensive coach.
That's right.
Another Rex Ryan protege in Mike Patton.
Right.
So, to me, if I step back here, do I think that they want Brian Hoyer to keep this job all season long? I do. I do. That's what I believe. Will he? I don't know. God bless him, because he might still crumble under the pressure of having Johnny Football looking over his shoulder pads game after game after game. It's almost going to be like Brian Hoyer can't even have an average game, or there's going to be an outcry for Johnny Football. Now, I believe this staff wanted to show the world they would not crumble under the fan pressure to start Johnny, the Cleveland Brown fan pressure, Cleveland, Browns Nation. But I'm going to say it one more time. Brian Hoyer is not Johnny Manziel. And I believe this team, if they started Johnny from the start at Pittsburgh, I believe this team would go 9-7. I believe if Brian Hoyer starts every game, they'll go 6-10. Obviously, Johnny will make more mistakes than Brian Hoyer will make. Johnny will also make way more game-winning plays than Brian Hoyer can even consider making, because he's just not capable of making those kinds of plays. So, big picture, I disagree. I get it. I'm not surprised by it. I'm not going to fight against it. It's all well and good for them. They took the safe, conservative, conventional way out, the NFL way out.
Sure.
And yet, I think they're hoping against hope that Brian Hoyer will hang on to a job I don't think he'll be able to hang on to.
Well, let's be clear. There's no reason to trip. This is going to mark their 12th starting quarterback in the last 14 years in Cleveland. 12 different quarterbacks to start the season in the last 14 years.
So you mean no reason to figuratively trip, right? Not literally trip, because they all trip, right?
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, like trip and fell.
Figuratively speaking, I say that simply because of this. Just because you start the season with Brian Hoyer doesn't mean you're going to finish it with him. Think about this. 1999, it's Ty Detmer. Next 2 seasons is Tim Couch.
We know.
After that is Kelly Holcomb. Then Jeff Garcia, Trent Dilfer, Charlie Fry, Derek Anderson, Brady Quinn, Jake Delhomme, Colt McCoy, Brandon Weed in the last 2 years. And now you've got Brian Hoyer.
But you also have a whole new regime.
I understand that. But again, you've had how many coaches? You've had 3 coaches in the last 3 years. You've had no consistency over the last 7 years. That's why you haven't won but so many games since you haven't won over 5 games since 2007. All I'm saying to you is that in the end, when you look at the Cleveland Browns, how they start, they're always trying to find their bearings. They're always trying to get their feet up under them to start the season. They never go in, it appears anyway, they never go into the season with a definitive plan on the offensive side of the ball. And knowing this, they hired a defensive-minded coach. Now, their defense is going to be legit. We know that. Their front 7 is no joke. You've got the corner. Hayden is no joke. You drafted Gilbert. You picked up a couple of other dudes. We'll see what they do. But everybody anticipates their defense to be top-notch. Anytime you've talked about Cleveland and what they're going to do offensively, what you said is, quote, you need a running game, whether it's Tate or West, because you have to have a running game to rely upon, because nobody was expecting but so much from the quarterback position anyway, particularly once the news came down about Josh Gordon that he was going to be gone. So throwing the football wasn't going to be plan number one. You wanted ball control. You wanted to run the football. You wanted to move the chains, give your defense some rest so they could come out on the field fresh and wreak havoc that way. That's their ingredient, which basically means we're really looking for a game manager at the quarterback position for now. And that's where Hoyer fits in.
How long is for now?
3 or 4 games.
That's all?
After the bye, Johnny starts. Make a
Are you sure?
proclamation.
Is this
No,
you're on the record?
Yes.
I'm not sure, but
I'm on the record.
let's be clear.
Yeah.
You've got Pittsburgh, you've got Baltimore in 2 of the first 3 weeks. It's not going to take long. Somebody going to suffer.
Hi, Skip Bayless. Johnny, after the bye, you ready?
Hey, Pittsburgh might have suffered in the first game.
Oh, gosh.
Hey, you don't think that longtime defensive coordinator is resting a little easier in your Steelers? What has Dick LeBeau said from the start of training camp? I'm preparing for Johnny Manziel.
But Johnny said he wasn't ready, Skip.
Yeah? Who said?
Johnny Manziel said he wasn't ready.
Said he wasn't ready?
Yeah.
I don't think he's saying that. I think he's saying from week to week, if you give him more snaps, he'd be ready.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
he wasn't ready last week for him, but he will be now.
Okay.
Would be.
So our social guru, Marcus Matthews, went to the Twitter and wrote